Evan hadn't called me Papa Bear since he was 10 years old. Not once. In 23 years. So when he raised his glass at my 60th birthday party in West Palm Beach and said, "To Papa Bear," my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. The room laughed. Lillian didn't. She stood beside him in a white dress that probably cost more than my first car, smiling like she belonged in every boardroom from here to Miami, founder of Blue Cypress Equity, polished, confident, perfect. Evan had finalized his divorce 3 months earlier, walked away with $185,000. She knew that. And when he said that name, I remembered the deal we made at summer camp after he got cornered by older boys. If I ever say that in public, Dad, it means I'm not safe. Lillian's eyes met mine. She didn't blink. Welcome to Final Act Revenge, ladies and gentlemen. Please note, this story contains fictionalized elements created for educational and entertainment purposes. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. And take care of your health tonight. Drink some water. Get some rest. Because that night, I realized my son wasn't celebrating me. He was warning me. And I had no idea how deep this was about to go. My name is Raymond Drinkwater. Most people call me Ray. For 28 years, I worked in the Financial Crimes Unit of the FBI. I was not the man who kicked down doors. I was the one who followed the money, quietly, patiently, sometimes for years. I believed numbers never lied. People did. I retired at 58. Not because I wanted to, because I could not carry one case anymore. 22 years ago, I led an investigation into a liquidation scheme that promised steady returns to retired couples across Florida. We were close. So close, I could taste it. But the indictment fell apart on a technical error. The mastermind walked. Within 6 months, one of the families we tried to protect lost everything. $2.4 million gone. The father shot himself in his garage. I still remember the smell of oil and salt air when I visited that house. That failure followed me into retirement. It followed me into every quiet morning on my dock in West Palm Beach. And it followed me into my relationship with my only son. Evan Drinkwater is 33, an architect, thoughtful, talented, too trusting. His marriage ended last year after 7 years that looked perfect from the outside. He walked away with $185,000 from the settlement. Not life-changing money, but enough to make him feel like he could start over. He told me once, "Dad, I don't want to be defined by a divorce." I told him, "Then don't let anyone rush you into rebuilding too fast." That was before Lillian Hart entered the picture. She met him at a waterfront charity event. Blue Cypress Equity had sponsored a table. She introduced herself as founder and managing partner. 31. Educated. Confident without being loud. She spoke about generational wealth and ethical investing as if she had memorized every insecurity a newly divorced man might carry. When I first shook her hand, her grip was firm but not challenging, her eyes steady. She said, "Mr. Drinkwater, I've read about some of your cases. You were ahead of your time. Most people in West Palm Beach know I used to be in federal law enforcement. Very few know details. She did." That night at my birthday party, she asked about estate planning, casually, as if discussing weather. "Have you ever considered restructuring your assets for tax efficiency, Ray?" "Ray, not Mr. Drinkwater." Evan laughed it off. "She's always working," he said. "It's kind of impressive." I nodded. I smiled. I said nothing. But inside I felt the same pressure I felt in interrogation rooms years ago. The sense that someone was studying the room, calculating angles, mapping exits. Later that evening, I stepped into my office and opened the old drawer where I keep a leather bracelet from Evan's summer camp. Papa Bear burned into the inside. I told myself I might be overreacting. I told myself I had lost perspective after that old case. Then my phone buzzed. An email notification from Blue Cypress Equity addressed to Evan. Subject line, Legacy Alignment Strategy Session. The meeting was scheduled for next Thursday at the Marlin Cove Hotel. Private signing luncheon. Invitation only. And for the first time since I left the bureau, I felt that old instinct whisper in my ear. This wasn't about my birthday. It was about something being set in motion. And I was already behind. The next morning, I did what I used to do best. I followed the money. Blue Cypress Equity had a clean website, clean filings, registered with the state, no open complaints, no sanctions, no warning flags. Too clean. I called Marta Ruiz. She works compliance at a regional bank in Palm Beach County. We crossed paths years ago when she was an analyst. Smart, careful, loyal to facts, not emotions. Marta, I said, run a quiet check on Blue Cypress, just public records. She called me back 2 hours later. Ray, they're solid on paper, structured properly, audited. Nothing illegal. Nothing illegal. That phrase used to calm me. It didn't now. I drove past their office that afternoon. Third floor of a glass building overlooking the Intracoastal. Discreet sign, frosted windows, a steady flow of well-dressed clients, mostly men, mostly alone. I sat in my truck longer than I care to admit. Then I saw something that tightened my chest. Every client walking out looked relieved, not excited. Relieved. That told me something, inside. Lillian Hart was not selling numbers. She was selling reassurance. That evening, Evan came over for dinner, alone. Dad, you're quiet, he said. I'm thinking. About Lillian? I didn't answer right away. I poured iced tea, sat across from him. What exactly is this luncheon? I asked. He smiled. It's an early investor session. Small group, higher returns, 16 to 20% projected. 16 to 20%. Those numbers haven't changed in 25 years. They're always just high enough to feel special and just believable enough to ignore caution. And the minimum? I asked. 120, he said. But I'm starting smaller. How much? He hesitated, then shrugged. 60. $60,000. Half of what he walked away with. I kept my voice steady. Have you seen independent verification? Dad, he said softly, you think every opportunity is a crime. I think patterns matter. He leaned back. Lillian showed me everything. Licensing, audits, past performance. Past performance can be arranged. He shook his head. You don't know her. That sentence landed harder than he realized. Later that night, I opened public corporate filings again. This time I traced the ownership tree deeper. Layered LLCs, management entities, advisory shells. Then I found a name in one of the archived amendments. G. Pike. Just an initial. But I knew that structure. I had seen it before. Cayman Holding Entity. Domestic Feeder Fund. Silent Capital Partner. I stared at the screen for a long time. Gordon Pike. He had walked away from my biggest failure. The filing was indirect, not proof, just a shadow. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, you can't chase ghosts. But the ghost was staring back at me. The next morning, Evan texted, Dad, Lillian wants to meet you for coffee. Just the two of you. Just the two of us. And something in my gut told me this wasn't a courtesy. It was a test. Lillian chose a cafe on Clematis Street. Outdoor seating. Light breeze off the water. The kind of place where retirees read financial pages and pretend not to worry about their portfolios. She arrived 5 minutes early. That told me something. When she stood to greet me, she wore soft colors. No power suit, no sharp edges. Just a pale blue dress and a thin gold chain at her neck. Ray, she said, smiling, I appreciate you making time. Not Mr. Drinkwater, Ray. I sat down slowly. Let my movements be deliberate, a little slower than usual. I forget things these days, I said casually. So remind me, what exactly does Blue Cypress specialize in? She did not blink. Strategic liquidity repositioning, she replied smoothly. We help clients align post-transition assets with long-term growth. Post-transition. That was how she described divorce. I stirred my coffee. And you do this often, with families? Mostly individuals, she said. Men who feel disoriented after major life shifts. She held my gaze when she said it. That was not random language. That was targeted psychology. I leaned back. I may need to revisit my estate documents soon. Memory isn't what it used to be. It was bait. She tilted her head slightly. Concern, or performance. Have you been evaluated? She asked more gently. Cognitive decline can sneak up. There it was. A probe. I misplace numbers, I said. Like the value of this house. Sometimes I think it's worth 1.2, sometimes 1.8. The house is worth about 1.5. She did not correct me, but I saw her thumb move against her phone under the table. Recording? Not sure. Asset volatility can be stressful, she said, especially if there's uncertainty around succession. Succession, not investment. I shifted the conversation. Your partner, G. Pike. That name sounds familiar. Her smile tightened for a fraction of a second, then relaxed. Silent capital partner, she said lightly. He doesn't interact with clients, but he benefits from them, I said. She held eye contact longer this time, testing dominance. Everyone benefits from healthy growth, she replied. I let a few seconds pass. Silence is uncomfortable for most people, not for her. When the check arrived, she reached for it first. Please, she said, let me take care of this. That was not generosity. That was positioning. Before we stood, she leaned in slightly. Ray, she said softly, Evan respects you deeply, but sometimes protective fathers see threats where there are none. There was no accusation in her tone, just suggestion, subtle gaslighting. I nodded slowly. And sometimes charming professionals overlook risk because they've never faced consequences. Her eyes flickered again, quick, sharp. Then she smiled. As we parted, she added, almost gently, the luncheon is tomorrow. I hope you'll come. It would mean a lot to Evan. Tomorrow. That was sooner than he told me, which meant one of them had adjusted the timeline. And I suddenly realized this meeting wasn't to reassure me. It was to measure me. I did not wait until tomorrow. That evening, I drove to Evan's apartment near Flagler Drive. The lights were on, music playing softly inside. I stood at the door longer than I needed to, reminding myself that this was my son, not a suspect. He opened the door with a half smile. Dad, didn't expect you. I figured we should talk, I said. He stepped aside. The place still smelled new, fresh paint, new furniture, a life rebuilt in neutral colors. On the kitchen counter sat a folder with Blue Cypress, printed in navy lettering. I did not touch it. We sat across from each other at the small dining table. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, You told me the luncheon was next week. He exhaled. They moved it up, scheduling conflict. Or urgency. He stiffened. Why does everything have to be a threat with you? It doesn't, but timing matters. He ran a hand through his hair. I've already transferred $60,000, Dad. It's an initial allocation, diversified strategy. You're acting like I wired money to a stranger in a parking lot. 60,000. Hearing it out loud was different from reading it in an email. I kept my voice even. Did you verify the custodial account? Yes. Independently? He paused. That's what I thought. He leaned forward. Lillian showed me documentation, audits, performance sheets. She didn't have to. She did, I said quietly. That's how trust is manufactured. His eyes flashed. You don't know her. I know patterns. He stood up suddenly. You don't trust anyone, Dad. That's the problem. You see criminals everywhere. I felt that one. That's why Mom left, he added, softer but sharper. The words hung in the room. I did not defend myself. I deserved some of that. After my failed case years ago, I brought suspicion home with me. I questioned neighbors. I questioned teachers. I questioned everyone. It wears on a marriage. I am not trying to control you, I said slowly. I am trying to keep you from being used. I'm not weak, he shot back. I didn't say you were. Then stop treating me like I am. He walked toward the window overlooking the water. The city lights reflected in the glass. For a second, he looked 10 years old again, small against something bigger than him. Lillian believes in me, he said quietly. She thinks I can build something real, not just survive a divorce. And what does she gain? I asked. Management fees, same as any fund. 16 to 20% projected returns, I said. That isn't standard. That's seductive. He turned back toward me. You checked, didn't you? I always check. He laughed once without humor. You're not FBI anymore. No, I agreed. But I'm still your father. Silence again. Then he said something that chilled me. There's a signing tomorrow. Full allocation. 120 total. I was going to wait, but now I'm not sure. Not sure because of me, I said. Yes. There it was. My fear had become the accelerant. I leaned forward. If you sign tomorrow, that money may be locked behind layered structures you won't understand until it's too late. You don't know that. I don't, I admitted, but I know how sophisticated fraud looks when it's dressed well. He shook his head. You're projecting. Maybe I was. Before I left, I asked one last question. Does Blue Cypress require a non-disclosure agreement before signing? He hesitated. Yes. My stomach tightened. Why? It's proprietary strategy. Or isolation. He didn't answer. As I reached the door, he said quietly, I don't need saving, Dad. That sentence hurt more than the 60,000. I stepped outside into the warm Florida night. The air smelled like salt and distant rain. My phone buzzed. A notification from Blue Cypress. Subject line, final commitment confirmation. Amount, $120,000 pending signature. Tomorrow at noon. And for the first time, I realized I might not be able to stop this without losing him entirely. That night I did not sleep. I sat in my office with the lights off, the glow from my monitor reflecting against the glass doors that looked out toward the water. When you spend nearly 3 decades chasing financial predators, you learn one thing. Fraud is rarely loud. It is patient. It smiles. It waits. At 7 the next morning, I called Marta Ruiz again. Marta, I said quietly, I need a favor that doesn't leave a footprint. She paused. How deep are we going, Ray? Deep enough to confirm whether Blue Cypress routes capital through any offshore feeder entities. There was silence on the line. That's not public information, she replied. I know, she exhaled. Give me a few hours. While I waited, I made a decision that surprised even me. If Lillian was studying me, then I would give her something to study. At 10, I called Evan. I've been thinking, I said slowly. You're right. I can't treat every opportunity like a crime scene. He sounded cautious. Dad? I may need to update my own estate documents anyway. Memory isn't sharp. Maybe Lillian could introduce me to whoever handles your paperwork. That silence on the other end, it was not relief, it was confusion. You want to meet their counsel? He asked. Yes. I heard him shifting. That's unexpected. I'm trying to trust you. That part was true. Within an hour, Lillian herself called me. Her voice was warm, measured. Ray, Evan mentioned you might be reviewing your estate planning. I'd be happy to coordinate. I get numbers mixed up lately, I said. Sometimes I forget if my property is worth 1.2 or 1.8. She did not correct me. Instead, she asked gently, "Have you spoken with a neurologist?" The question was careful, professional, concerned, calculated. I misplace dates, I continued. Even the old case files sometimes blur together. A pause. Then she said something that shifted the temperature. Gordon Pike remembers those files clearly. My grip tightened around the phone. I'm sorry? I asked. Our capital partner follows historic regulatory patterns. He admires strong investigators. Admiration, or surveillance. I'd like to meet him, I said. Another pause, longer this time. That may be possible, she replied slowly, after tomorrow's signing. After tomorrow. Everything led to that room. Around noon, Marta called back. I can't give you documents, she said quietly, but I can tell you this. Blue Cypress funnels a portion of capital through a Cayman entity named Harbor Meridian Holdings. My chest went cold. Harbor Meridian, I repeated. That name familiar? Too familiar. 22 years ago, the liquidation scheme that destroyed that family had used a Cayman feeder under a near-identical structure. Different shell, same architecture. You're certain? I asked. As certain as I can be without crossing lines. It was enough. I drove past Marlin Cove Hotel that afternoon. 14 floors of glass overlooking the Atlantic. Valet service. Discretion guaranteed. Through the lobby windows, I saw banners already being set up. Blue Cypress Equity. Legacy Alignment Luncheon. It looked elegant. It looked legitimate. It looked exactly like something I once failed to stop. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. You look tired, Ray. Then another. Tomorrow at noon, we finish what you started. No signature, no explanation. But I knew. Gordon Pike was not a shadow anymore. He was watching. And for the first time since retirement, I understood that this wasn't just about Evan's $120,000. It was about a debt, 22 years old. And tomorrow, they expected me to sit quietly in the room. I arrived at Marlin Cove 40 minutes early, old habits. The lobby smelled like polished wood and expensive perfume. Soft piano music drifted from somewhere near the bar. Men in tailored jackets checked in at a discreet table near the elevators. Each of them carried the same expression I had seen outside the Blue Cypress office. Relief mixed with hope. Hope is the most valuable currency in West Palm Beach. I stayed in the background, observed, counted faces, 12 invitees, all male, all over 50. 2 wedding rings still on fingers that probably should have been bare. One man nervously adjusting his cufflinks. Another staring at his phone as if waiting for someone to tell him he was doing the right thing. At 11:30, Evan walked in. He saw me immediately. For a second, his posture tightened. Then he approached. I didn't know you were coming this early, he said. I wanted to see the room, I replied. He studied me carefully. Dad, are you really okay with this? I'm here, I said. That's what matters. Before he could respond, Lillian appeared beside him. She wore navy today. Structured, professional, not soft cafe blue. This was presentation armor. Ray, she said smoothly, I'm glad you made it. So am I answered. Her eyes searched my face, measuring, calculating. Then she did something unexpected. She handed me a folder. For your review, she said. Draft estate realignment outline, just in case. I opened it slowly. Inside were preliminary figures, property valuation estimates, liquid asset summaries, trust restructuring suggestions. They were close, too close. Where did you get these numbers? I asked quietly. Public estimations, she replied, plus what Evan mentioned. I turned toward my son. He looked confused. I didn't give her specifics. Lillian's expression did not change. Perhaps you implied more than you realized, she said gently. There it was again. Subtle redirection. I closed the folder. You move quickly, I said. In our world, she replied. Hesitation costs opportunity. We entered the ballroom together. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Atlantic light pouring in. A projector screen at the front. Discreet catering along one wall. At each place setting, a folder with blue cypress branding and a digital tablet for electronic signatures. Clean, organized, professional. Dylan Cross stood near the podium, speaking quietly with two attendees, mid-40s, precise haircut, litigation posture. The doors closed at noon sharp. Lillian stepped to the front. Gentlemen, she began, today is about reclamation. After loss, after transition, after uncertainty, you deserve growth. Her voice carried easily across the room, controlled, persuasive. She moved through slides detailing strategy, projected returns, capital protection layers, 16 to 20%, diversified feeder structures, strategic offshore positioning. I watched faces soften as she spoke. Then she invited questions. A gray-haired man in the second row raised his hand. How soon would capital be liquid if needed? Within 90 days under standard conditions, she replied without hesitation. I knew that phrase, standard conditions, undefined, elastic. Evan sat upright, focused, listening carefully. He was not naive, he was hopeful. Halfway through the presentation, my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. You still think you are in control. I looked toward the back of the room. Near the side exit stood a tall, older man in a light linen jacket, silver hair, hands clasped calmly behind his back. Gordon Pike. Even after 22 years, I recognized the posture. He did not approach. He did not speak. He only watched. At the front of the room, Lillian transitioned to the final slide. Commitment structure. Full allocation window closes today. Digital tablets lit up simultaneously. Dylan Cross stepped forward. Gentlemen, you will find the signing interface on your screens. Our team is available for clarification. Evan picked up his tablet. My pulse slowed. I stood. Before anyone signs, I said calmly, I have a question. Every head turned. Lillian did not look surprised. In fact, she almost looked relieved. Of course, Ray, she said. Please. I walked slowly toward the front. You mentioned layered entities for tax optimization, I continued. Would you mind clarifying the relationship between Blue Cypress and Harbor Meridian Holdings? The room shifted. Dylan Cross stiffened. Lillian held her composure. That structure is standard in private equity, she replied smoothly. Yes, I agreed. It is, especially when capital flows offshore. I turned slightly so the room could see me clearly, and especially when the silent capital partner has prior history with regulatory scrutiny. A murmur moved across the tables. Lillian's eyes sharpened. That is a serious implication, she said quietly. Is it inaccurate? I asked. From the back of the room, Gordon Pike finally stepped forward. Raymond, he said in a measured tone, you always did enjoy a dramatic entrance. The air left the room. Evan looked from me to Pike and back again. You know him? My son asked. I did not break eye contact with Pike. Yes, I said. And that, Pike replied calmly, is exactly why you shouldn't be trusted. The room did not explode the way people imagine in movies. It tightened, like pressure building behind glass. Gordon Pike walked forward with the calm of a man who had never rushed in his life. Silver hair, linen jacket, a slight smile that did not reach his eyes. Raymond, he said evenly, still chasing ghosts. I held his gaze. I prefer patterns. A few of the attendees looked confused. Others looked irritated. One man whispered to Dylan Cross. Tablets remained lit on the tables, waiting for signatures. Lillian stepped between us with controlled grace. "Gentlemen," she said to the room, "this is a misunderstanding rooted in an old professional disagreement." Old professional disagreement. That was how she framed a case that ended in a suicide. Evan stood up. "Dad, what is this?" I turned to him. Gordon Pike was connected to a liquidation structure 2 decades ago that destroyed families. Pike chuckled softly. "Allegedly." "I could never prove it," I admitted. "That was my failure." There it was, the word that had followed me for years. Failure. Lillian looked at Evan, not at me. "You see," she said gently, "this is personal for him. Gaslighting works best when wrapped in sympathy. Ray," she continued calmly, "Blue Cypress is fully compliant. Your history does not invalidate our work." I scanned the faces in the room. They were not angry yet. They were uncertain. And uncertainty in a financial setting favors the polished presenter, not the retired investigator. Pike folded his hands. "If you have evidence," he said, "present it. Otherwise, you are interfering with private business." I did not have enough. Not yet. Evan stepped closer to me, his voice lowered. "You told me you were coming to support me." "I am," I said. "This doesn't look like support." The words hit harder than Pike's accusation. Dylan Cross moved subtly toward the podium controls. "Gentlemen," he said, "we are on a schedule. If there are no documented objections, we should proceed." "Proceed." The tablets glowed brighter in the silence. I felt the weight of 22 years pressing down on my chest. The family I failed. The boy who lost his father. The marriage I strained with suspicion. Was I doing it again? Lillian spoke softly, but clearly. "Evan, you have already completed initial allocation. The remaining 60,000 will finalize your position. If you hesitate now, the opportunity closes." She did not look at me when she said it. She looked only at him. I saw something flicker in Evan's eyes. Not greed, not recklessness. Belief. Belief that he was reclaiming something. I stepped back. For the first time since I walked into that ballroom, I doubted myself. Maybe Blue Cypress was aggressive but legal. Maybe Pike had learned. Maybe I was dragging ghosts into my son's present. Evan picked up the tablet. My hands felt suddenly heavy. I thought about grabbing it, stopping him physically. But if I did that, I would lose him for good. "Dad," he said quietly, not looking at me, "I need to do this." The screen in front of him displayed the final authorization prompt. Commitment confirmation, 90-day lock period. I saw the clause, the one Marta hinted at. Capital subject to structured redistribution under extraordinary market conditions. Extraordinary. Undefined. Evan's finger hovered over the signature line. Lillian watched without blinking. Pike's expression did not change. I heard my own voice from years ago in an interrogation room. Wait for the mistake. I stepped closer to the table, but I did not speak. Evan signed. The digital confirmation flashed. Transfer pending full allocation $120,000. My chest hollowed out. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Pike nodded once. Wise decision. The room relaxed. Applause followed. Light, polite. Lillian leaned toward Evan. "You won't regret this." I stood there, powerless. 22 years ago, I failed to stop a structure like this. And now, I had watched my own son walk into it. As the luncheon resumed, my phone vibrated again. This time, it was Marta. 3 words. "Check your email." I did not move right away. The applause faded. Waiters began refilling glasses. Lillian resumed speaking to the group about onboarding timelines as if nothing had shifted. My phone vibrated again. "Check your email." I stepped toward the back of the ballroom and opened my inbox. Marta had forwarded a document, not a public filing, not a press release, an internal compliance alert flagged by a correspondent bank in Miami. Subject: suspicious capital cycling pattern. Attached was a transaction flow chart. Blue Cypress Equity transferred client capital to Harbor Meridian Holdings within 48 hours of receipt. Harbor Meridian then moved funds through a secondary Cayman vehicle, Atlantic Crest Fiduciary. From there, the capital was leveraged against short-term instruments and quietly reallocated to a domestic liquidation trust under Gordon Pike's name. I stared at the chart. Same architecture, same staggered delay, same 90-day lock window. The structure was not illegal on paper, but it was engineered to trap liquidity. If market volatility was declared extraordinary, funds could be rebalanced for up to 18 months. 18 months, long enough to bleed confidence dry, long enough to bury complaints in paperwork. I scrolled further. Marta had highlighted something else, a list of prior investors, 11 names, all male, all divorced or widowed within the past 2 years. Total capital exposure just under $3.8 million. My throat tightened. This was not just a boutique fund. It was a harvesting machine. Behind me, I heard Lillian's voice carrying across the room. Gentlemen, transparency is our foundation. Transparency. I turned and looked at her. She was radiant, controlled, convincing. Evan stood near the window speaking with another investor. He looked lighter somehow, as if signing had removed doubt. I walked back toward the main floor. Lillian noticed me immediately. "Ray," she said warmly, "did you need something?" "Yes," I replied evenly. "A moment." She excused herself from the table and stepped aside with me. "You should not have interrupted earlier," she said quietly. No smile now. "It undermines confidence." "You engineered that," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "Engineered what?" "The lock window, the capital cycling, Harbor Meridian." For the first time, her expression shifted, not to fear, but to irritation. "You are reading patterns where there are none," she said. "No," I answered softly. "I am reading patterns that repeat." She lowered her voice further. "You still think this is about you." It became about me the moment Pike stepped into that room. She held my gaze. "Gordon invests in opportunity, so do we. At the expense of men rebuilding their lives?" She did not flinch. Those men chose to invest. Choice. That word again. Behind us, Pike approached. "Raymond," he said calmly, "you are creating unnecessary drama." I faced him fully now. "You built Harbor Meridian," I said. "I structured capital vehicles," he replied. "Legally. Designed to trap liquidity. Designed to protect capital from impulsive withdrawal." We stood inches apart. "You walked away once," Pike continued quietly. "You could not prove anything then. You still cannot." He was right about one thing. I did not yet have proof of criminal conduct, but I had something else now: pattern, structure, motive, and witnesses. I raised my voice just enough for nearby investors to hear. "Gentlemen," I said calmly, "before you celebrate projected returns, you may want to review the 90-day extraordinary clause in your agreement." Heads turned. Dylan Cross stepped in quickly. "This is inappropriate," he said sharply. "Is it inaccurate?" I asked. Silence. One of the older investors frowned. "What extraordinary clause?" Evan looked toward me, confusion replacing certainty. Pike's jaw tightened slightly. He realized something. I had not come to stop the signing. I had come to stall the clock. Because once extraordinary conditions were declared, capital could be suspended. And Marta's email had one final attachment: a pending volatility alert from a European index tied to one of Harbor Meridian's leveraged positions. If that alert triggered within the next 72 hours, funds would freeze. I looked at Pike. You built this structure assuming no one would recognize it, I said quietly. He studied me for a long second. Then he smiled again. You are too late. Behind me, I heard a notification sound. Not mine, Evan's. He looked down at his phone. His face changed. Evan stared at his phone as if it had just betrayed him. His thumb trembled. Dad, he whispered. I stepped closer. On his screen was a breaking market alert. European Composite Index down 7.4% in early trading. A liquidity warning attached to leveraged funds exposed to Atlantic banking derivatives. Exactly the trigger window Marta had flagged. Exactly the clause Harbor Meridian depended on. Around us, the ballroom noise dulled into a low hum. What does that mean? One investor asked. Before I could answer, Dylan Cross grabbed his own tablet and began scrolling fast. Lillian's composure cracked, not loudly, not dramatically, but in the way her shoulders stiffened, in the way her smile no longer reached her eyes. Pike didn't move. He watched me. Market volatility is temporary, he said smoothly. Our extraordinary clause protects capital. By freezing it, I replied. A murmur rippled through the room. Evan looked from me to Lillian. Is that true? He asked her. She turned to him, voice calm again. It's standard language. Every private fund has it. Every private fund doesn't funnel capital through 3 offshore layers within 48 hours, I said quietly. Dylan snapped, You have no evidence of wrongdoing. I have structure, I answered, and timing. I reached into my jacket and pulled out printed copies Marta had sent minutes earlier. Transaction charts, capital cycling timelines. The pending volatility alert tied to Harbor Meridian's leveraged exposure. I handed one to the investor who had first questioned the clause. He adjusted his glasses and read. Silence deepened. Pike finally spoke. You cannot stand here and accuse my firm based on speculation. I'm not accusing, I said. I'm informing. Evan's breathing grew shallow. Lillian, he said, why didn't you tell me about the Cayman vehicle? It's a standard fiduciary layer, she replied sharply. You're overreacting. No, I said softly. He's reacting exactly as you expected him not to. Her eyes flicked to me. There it was. The calculation. The assumption that pride and greed would override caution. That a man rebuilding his life after divorce would chase yield before reading footnotes. One of the older investors spoke up. My wife passed last year, he said slowly. I'm not locking my retirement in something I don't understand. Another added, neither am I. Dylan moved quickly toward the signing table. We can delay execution, he offered, just until markets stabilize. That's not what your contract says, I replied. Execution happens upon signature. Extraordinary conditions allow suspension. The room shifted. Pike stepped closer to me. You're jeopardizing legitimate business, he said under his breath. I'm protecting my son. His expression hardened. Your son is an adult. Yes, I said. And I taught him to read emergency signals. Evan looked at me then. Papa Bear, he said quietly, not as a warning this time, as acknowledgement. Lillian's voice dropped. You've been playing weak, she said to me. The memory lapses, the hesitation. I met her gaze. I wanted to see how far you'd go. A flicker of anger crossed her face. You think this ends here? She asked. No, I answered. It begins here. At that moment, 2 men in dark suits stepped through the ballroom entrance, not loud, not theatrical, measured. Behind them walked a woman in a navy blazer holding a badge case. Marta. She caught my eye once. Pike exhaled slowly. Dylan stepped back from the signing table. Lillian didn't move. The woman with the badge addressed the room calmly. We're here regarding Harbor Meridian Holdings and Atlantic Crest Fiduciary. The air tightened. Pike finally turned toward the agents. "You have no warrant for arrest," he said evenly. "Not yet," Marta replied. "But we do have a freeze order." A collective breath left the room. Evan closed his eyes briefly. Lillian's composure fractured, not into panic, but into something colder, resentment. She looked at me. "You think you've won?" I didn't answer, because across the ballroom, as agents began requesting documents, I noticed something that didn't fit. Dylan wasn't frightened. He was watching someone else. Near the back exit, a tall man in a light gray suit slipped his phone into his pocket and walked out calmly before anyone stopped him. I had never seen him before, but Pike's eyes followed him, and that told me everything. When the ballroom finally emptied, it felt smaller, not because the walls had moved, but because illusion had. Harbor Meridian's accounts were frozen within hours. Investors received formal notices by morning. The extraordinary clause that was meant to trap their capital had instead locked the structure in place long enough for federal examiners to trace every wire. Gordon Pike was not arrested that night. Men like him rarely are. But his access evaporated. His partners distanced themselves. His name began appearing in places he could not control. Dylan Cross resigned within 48 hours. Lillian Kane did not. She hired counsel. She released a statement claiming she had been misled by secondary management layers. Maybe she believed that, maybe she didn't. That part stopped mattering to me. Evan sat with me on my porch 3 nights later. West Palm Beach was quiet except for the low rush of the Atlantic wind. "I almost signed," he said. "Yes," I replied. He swallowed. "I thought I was smarter than that." "You are," I said. "But intelligence doesn't cancel loneliness." He nodded slowly. That was the part most men never admit. We do not lose money because we are foolish. We lose it because someone studies our grief, our pride, our need to rebuild something after it breaks. 6 months later, Harbor Meridian dissolved under regulatory review. Atlantic Crest Fiduciary quietly shuttered. The tall man in the gray suit? His name surfaced in a separate inquiry tied to a larger private equity consortium out of Chicago. That story is still unfolding, which means this was never just about one girlfriend with sharp eyes and perfect manners. It was about structure, about patience, about predators who do not shout, they calculate. Evan and I speak every Sunday now, not because we are afraid, but because we remember how easily silence can grow between men who love each other. He still calls me Papa Bear sometimes, not as an alarm, as a reminder of who we are when we slow down and listen. If there is one thing I learned, again, it is this. Fraud does not begin with greed. It begins with trust placed too quickly. And recovery does not begin with revenge. It begins with clarity. Thank you for listening and sharing this time with me today. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. If you stayed until the end, rate this story from 1 to 10. Your feedback truly helps me craft even stronger stories for you. Please note, this story contains fictionalized elements created for educational and entertainment purposes. And if this story moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube believes you'll enjoy it. So take a moment and step into the next chapter.